For people who are familiar with this channel, this video is going to be a bit of a divergence. If you're new here, I'm a trumpet player who makes videos about jazz improvisation, brass playing, jazz history, and the business of being a professional musician. But in this one, I'm going to review a product that I know nothing about and I have no experience to draw on. This is the R1 wind synthesizer from a company called Robco. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, wind synths have been around since the 1970s, beginning as far as I know with the EVI, or electronic valve instrument. Now, my entire professional career as a trumpet player has essentially paralleled the evolution and widespread use of digital musical instruments. But up until now, I've never made any forays into that world. And to be honest, I've never really been attracted to the sound of electronic instruments. I'm an acoustic guy through and through, and even after 50-odd years, I still have my hands full dealing with a length of brass pipe. This was my perspective when I received an email from Emily, a representative from Robco, asking whether I'd be interested in reviewing the R1. Normally, I wouldn't feel inclined or qualified to review a product about which I have no expertise. But this intrigued me as a project, and Emily felt that my perspective as a trained musician, but with no knowledge about this kind of instrument, could be informative for potential customers. So with that understanding, and with the acknowledgement that Robco sent this to me for free, in this video and others to follow, I'm going to share with you my honest thoughts about the R1 wind synthesizer. Because I have no basis for comparison, this won't be a review in the normal sense. I've put the unboxing on screen for those who like to see that, but basically the R1 comes with pretty much what you'd expect: the instrument, a mouthpiece and cover, neck strap, charging cable, instruction manual, and a soft case. Now, I will say that the packaging is impressive. Steve Jobs would improve. The instrument itself is surprisingly light and the controls are streamlined. It sort of resembles a clarinet, and it makes a good first impression. At this point, this is the extent of my first-hand knowledge. I haven't even turned it on yet. I wanted to make this first video before I did that, so that I could share my thoughts and questions at the outset about approaching a digital instrument with a brass player's mindset. Once I have some time to figure out the basic operation, I'll make another video to share what I've learned and how hard it was to get up and running. Now, the R1 is supposed to be easy to play, but I'm still anticipating a learning curve. The first question I have is, who is this instrument intended for? Well, based on the advertising, the R1 seems primarily to target the untrained or amateur musician. The slogan on the website says, "Learn in minutes, gig in 2 weeks." Now, that's a bit of marketing chutzpah based on the assumption that Twinkle Twinkle will be on the set list, but I appreciate that the simplified design should be easier for someone who's starting from scratch, whether that's musically or technologically, or both. After watching some of the promotional videos, which are clearly geared towards beginners, I wondered whether this would actually seem more like a toy. But after listening to demonstrations of people making expressive music with the R1, well, I believe that the potential is there. Now, it's an open question in my mind how long it might take to reach that kind of potential, but I'm game to give it a shot. My next question is, to what degree can the experience of playing a digital instrument replicate or substitute for the experience of playing an acoustic instrument? And should I even be wondering about that? The whole point of a wind synth is to incorporate the expressive aspects of an acoustic wind instrument. Using my breath to initiate the sound and control the volume, and my tongue to articulate are obviously transferable skills. But there are a lot of other physical aspects of playing the trumpet that don't exist with an instrument like this one. See, the thing that makes a brass instrument unique and puts us in league with vocalists is that we vibrate a part of our body to produce the sound. Our tone quality is directly related to the body, as is the ability to play in different registers, produce vibrato or bends, and other aspects of sound production. The physicality of the process gives us a connection to the instrument that I believe is present to a greater degree with the trumpet than with other instruments. Now, that is certainly true of a digital instrument like the R1, where the push of a button changes the sound or jumps us up 2 octaves. Now, there is an upside to this, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I wonder about how much is lost in the admittedly easier process. Mechanically, a trumpet is about as simple as it gets, with only 3 valves. Wind synthesizers seem generally geared towards woodwind players who are used to using the fingers of both hands. Now, I know that the R1 can be set up to utilize a version of trumpet fingering, but it still requires the use of more than 3 fingers because a lot of what brass players do with the lips has to be accomplished with buttons. So I also wonder how difficult or frustrating that adaptation will be. My next question is, what will I think about the sound quality? Now, as an acoustic musician, I believe that no electronic device can rival the organic aspect of sound that emanates from brass or wood, so that's a given. Listening to the demos online, Of the 30 sounds that are built into the R1, many are traditional Chinese instruments, which to my untrained ears sound pretty realistic. They also include instruments like the trumpet and sax, but to my trained ears, these sound kind of fake and cheesy. I tend to agree with those who say that synths are best used not to imitate other instruments, but to create unique sounds of their own. As a MIDI controller, the R1 can be used with external tone banks, but for now, I'm going to stick with the internal sound since I think that's what most people who buy this instrument will do. Finally, and probably most importantly, how do I see the R1 fitting into my own musical life? I'm viewing this project as a musical experiment. I don't see a wind synth as something that I would use on gigs, and I don't expect to reach a level of ability that has taken me over half a century on my trumpet. But looking down the road, I acknowledge that there might come a time when I would be willing to forego practicing long tones and flexibilities every day if there was an alternative musical outlet. Now, honestly, it's not very easy for me to envision that. Trumpet practice is such an ingrained part of my life. But it's intriguing to think of this as a potential option for the future. Now, one thing that I know for sure, having spent my entire life requiring a practice space that insulates others from the sound of my trumpet, having an instrument that can be heard through headphones is very attractive. So this is where my experience with the R1 might resonate with those who don't have a high level of musical training, or any at all. That could include people of any age, but perhaps even more so for older folks who may not have the inclination or even the physical wherewithal to deal with the demands of an acoustic instrument. When you can push a button and blow some air and out comes a full-fledged sound, well, that gets you a lot of steps down the road right off the bat. And I expect my adult trumpet students know just what I'm talking about. In a follow-up video, I'll let you hear my fledgling efforts on the R1. If you find yourself intrigued by what I've discussed here, well, let me know in the comments. Do you already play an instrument? And if so, how would you describe your level of ability? What stage of life are you at? And what would an instrument like this be for you? If you have specific questions or things you'd like me to talk about, let me know that too. So hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more.